Alex, a few years ago, 3 years ago, say, we probably wouldn't be talking about this topic because the virtual's been new to a lot of us, and I'm sure we've all sat through and experienced some meetings that haven't been run particularly well, and there are some reasons for that. So, just take us through, Alex, some of your some of your experiences, and what sort of things to get right when it comes to setting up virtual meetings.
So thank you, Gareth. And I think there are two things to this. One is the setup for it, so the intentional setup for meetings, and then there's actually some of the skills you can use during the meeting, and I'll touch on both of those. So first of all, the setup. First of all, remember this: a virtual meeting is not a physical meeting done virtually. You can't just lift and drop. You've got to take into account the fact that the virtual medium provides barriers and distractions for the participants and is not as smooth and easy to build rapport with a group. So the setup's really important. And what I mean by setup is how you expect that meeting to run. So, for example, at the beginning of the meeting, laying out the ground rules for the meeting. And what I mean by ground rules is more about what you expect the meeting to deliver at the end of the meeting, but also how you expect people to show up. So the expectation around, for example, participation, the expectation around, for example, preparation for that meeting, the expectation around what you expect people to share during that meeting, the expectation around timing and breaks and discipline, if you like, in terms of being on time. So some, meeting practices that would work in the physical world, but oriented very specifically to the virtual world. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do to make the experience most positive.
Okay, so there's something there about the setup and managing expectations, but you were just touching on during the meetings as well. So what would be your top two, top three tips to really make those meetings run smoothly from a setting expectations perspective?
So if you think about being a participant in the meeting, it's the easiest thing in the world to not participate because nobody's watching you. You haven't got that social pressure within the physical room of people, if you like, watching what you're doing. So the number one tip, by far the most significantly important thing to remember is participation. Okay, making sure that you get people engaged and involved. Now, part of that's about the engaging content that you might create and the visual stimulus that you might use, but most importantly, it's about involving people. So, for example, if you've got a big meeting or even a small meeting, use the chat function to get people to contribute to the conversation. So using questions to bring people in. So number one is participation. Number two is quality of experience. So for example, very simply, just making sure everybody's on mute unless you're bringing them in. So letting them, asking them to unmute if you want them to speak, clearly, just to remind them of that, to avoid those awkward pauses, but keeping them on mute and keeping their cameras on. I cannot stress how important that is because the visual contact and your ability to connect with them, actually see what's going on in the room, is very easy because you've got it all in front of you. So there's something about if you like, the behavior within the room. And then there's something for you. If you're running the meeting, think about your setup. You want to come across professionally. You want people to see you, given that your face is going to do much more of the talking than the rest of you because you're not physically with them. So think about your setup as well. So make sure that where you are, you're not peering down at the camera, that you've got the lens up at your eye level, that you're well lit, that your microphone is of good quality, that you haven't got too much reverberation going on in the room. So it's simple and easy to hear. So think about those three things. So three things: interaction. Okay, so thinking about how you're going to get people to participate during the meeting, thinking about some of the tools of interaction specifically, but also then the setup that you're going to use to make sure that you come across in the best possible way. Simple things, but they make a big difference to that experience in the meeting.
Okay, so some great tips there just to make those virtual meetings just run that a little bit more effectively than perhaps most people have experienced. So top tips. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.